Just a very quick one on the other matter that we have raised about the visa racketeering that was alleged against some members of parliament, and particularly there is one of them who has been fighting. There are about two of them who are fighting it, and this particular one, that is the former member for Esunafo South, he has sought to he has the British High Commission to withdraw their claims, which tarnishes his image that he has been involved in fraud simply because he sponsored his daughter, and for 4 years the daughter breached the terms of the visa, and on the basis of that he has been tagged as a fraud by the British High Commission. He wrote to them through his lawyers. They replied by themselves. Then he wrote back and told them, if you don't point me to what constitutes fraud in the circumstances, I am not going to take this lying down. The British Commission appears to have advised themselves, and they got their lawyers this time round to write back to him. And when their lawyers wrote, they also didn't seem to categorically say fraud, but they said whatever you did appears to have constituted what they call a serious offense. So, is it the case that we are all joining the British High Commission to condemn our MPs wrongly in some of the circumstances, as Boakye is alleging, or that's who they are? They use their positions to facilitate fraudulent activity. Again, I start with Kwekubako. Very briefly on this one.
Well, I haven't seen those letters. I've only seen media reports.
Okay.
And I recall we dealt with an aspect of it here not too long ago. This is a quote from Mr. Boakye. He says, I wrote to them, that's the British High Commission, and made them aware that I never used any diplomatic passport. I even sent them a copy of my passport to them. So they wrote back and told me that they never said I used diplomatic passport and that they have not banned me for 10 years. Then my lawyer wrote to them again, asking them to show where in the visa application process we acted fraudulently. And that was the reply we were expecting from them. Yes, it's clear. As we indicated here, if you read this British High Commission statement to the Speaker, nowhere did they say Mr. Boakye had used diplomatic passport. There was nowhere in this letter. So I think that he misread the charge, if one can call it so, that was put at him. So I really don't see the basis for...
They place a charge of fraud on him.
No, I'm coming up, I'm right. Relative to the diplomatic passport thing, which he himself is reinforcing.
It does look like they have they reinforced? It does look like they have abandoned that point now.
Who?
And I insisting on the question of fraud.
I wrote to them and made them aware I never used any diplomatic passport.
Okay.
That letter should not even have contained this.
All right, all right.
Because nobody said, if you read the letter to the Speaker, that he had applied for the visas using diplomatic passport. It was a non-existent matter. You know, so I thought he was just wasting time on that level.
Okay.
Now, issue of the fraud. I'm not a lawyer. You are the lawyers. You can determine that. It appears that's where the problem is.
That's true.
Yes, that's from Mr. Boakye's view. He can deal with that. I'm not a lawyer. I don't really know. But I think something did go wrong.
Right.
Your daughter, you applied for the visa, both you and your daughter. You traveled with your daughter. She stayed there for 3 or 4 years. That's violating the terms of the visa, and returned just not too long ago. Obviously, the Commission will be worried about that.
Okay. Okay, let me bring in the two lawyers here first. But tied to that also is a question of revoking diplomatic, passports that past ministers are still holding.
Yes, and indeed, again, they were talking about the Commission had banned him. That the Commission said they hadn't banned him. There was nowhere in this letter. The Commission said unlikely.
Okay.
So again, there was not an effective declaration of a ban.
All right.
So chasing something that was non-existent again. Okay. Now the issue of the diplomatic passports, as now we realized that some ex-MPs or ministers are keeping their diplomatic passports. What I heard from the foreign minister, that there's an attempt to retrieve. I heard some NDC former ministers and they said everybody is retained. But somehow one has come out and said, I still have mine, except I can't find it, it's missing. Yes, it's legitimate. We must ensure that only those who qualify to use diplomatic passport do so. There are people even raising issues as to the categories of people who must be given that kind of privilege.
Right.
That's another subject for another day.
Thank you. Honorable Yusuf Seni, what do you say about Mr. George Boakye's situation?
I think
he says that his issue really with the British High Commission is that if I sponsored my daughter and she's an adult and goes and does not come, you know, and breaches the conditions of the visa for 4 years, that doesn't constitute fraud. So take that tag off me. You are defaming me.
Well, he sponsored the daughter.
Yes, he did.
The daughter, as an adult, should have walked into the embassy to apply for the visa. Why didn't the daughter walk into the embassy to apply for the visa? And so you see, I mean, Mr. Boakye, to me, I even look at it more from the point of view of Parliament. And their acts are potentially contemptuous of Parliament.
If you guarantee something for somebody, if you steal surety for someone who has been involved in a crime and has been brought to court and they ran away, are you said to be a fraud? The bond. Yes.
They punish you for, I mean, standing surety for somebody who has run away. They punish you.
Are you said to be the one who has committed the offense of fraud, for example?
No vicarious liability for the commission of an offense. There's no. But you are punished for undertaking to do something when you knew you had no capacity to do that. You are punished for it. And that's deceit. That's dishonesty. That's it. And so, my brother, I mean, you must look beyond that.
Does fraud mean dishonesty?
That is part of dishonesty. It's part of dishonesty.
People are guaranteeing, you know, snake, as it were, for students.
So when you guarantee...
Sir, may I get a bit more explanation?
Yes.
They're guaranteeing for students loans. People finish school, they travel abroad, they don't come back to pay. Are they the ones held to have committed a wrong? Or simply because they guaranteed, it is exacted from them? Does that make them the ones who have committed a wrong?
No, the wrongs are in classes. The principal wrong was committed by the person who took the facility from Senate.
Okay.
Okay? But you undertook to perform certain duties.
Right.
The fact that you have failed, neglected, or refused to perform those duties holds your, you bring yourself within the ambit of responsibility which is acceptable by punishment. And that's what has happened in this case. That if you know you have no capacity.
My question is that by law, you don't suffer for the crime. You suffer, but you don't suffer the crime of that person.
I agree entirely with you. That is why the Ghana frowns upon vicarious responsibility for the commission of a crime. You can't hold your father responsible for the crime that you have committed. Okay? And that's why we are fighting truculence.
Okay.
So I agree entirely with you. But I'm saying that in standing surety, you must be clear in your mind that you are assuming responsibility.
So is he right by saying that if you take away the tag of fraud on him?
Well, I think they have not charged him for fraud. He
said they should withdraw that.
Yeah, they have not said he's fraudulent. They have nowhere in the letter have they said that he has acted fraudulently. No. He says that he undertook... He just responded to the media. He undertook to sponsor his daughter to go to Britain. He was given a visa for a limited period, a temporary visa. The visa had terms and conditions. That his daughter, who he stood surety for or sponsored, breached those terms and conditions. And so he's held responsible for sponsoring his daughter, who has breached the terms and conditions of the visa. And this is a different matter.
The revocation of the diplomatic passports?
Yeah,
and the argument now is that for those of you who won your seats and returned to Parliament, when you were ministers, you got diplomatic passports. It should not extend to you because parliamentarians are enjoying it.
Yes, that's why I think that the minister should have just contacted the former chief of staff, draw up a list of ministers who got, or Minister of Foreign Affairs, draw up a list of those ministers who got the privilege of using a diplomatic passport.
That list should be there in the first place.
Yes, in the first place, and then act on it. This going this public and demonizing everybody is not the best way to go. I mean, the institutions of state must work. And that's why we have institutional memory. Even with that recourse to the minister, the present minister can get the list from the passport office and just proceed against the people who, in your view, are not entitled to enjoy that privilege. Simple and short.
Okay.
Nowadays, every time you come up against a public problem, you have to attack the institutions for not performing. I mean, what is so difficult about having a list of people who were issued a certain right by virtue of their office? And what is wrong with retrieving or voluntarily giving up that right at a time when it expires? I had a service passport when I served in government. When I was leaving office, somebody from state protocol came to my office and demanded that I return my service passports.
Why did you wait for that?
No. Whilst we were in office.
Okay.
We hadn't left. I wasn't at home.
Okay.
It was taken from me before I left. And then they made sure I had my old Mr. Citizen passport on me. They gave that to me. Okay. You understand? So why do we have a failure of public records in this instance? And it degenerates into a public spat. And then one individual former deputy minister says, we have returned our passports. And he purports to speak for everybody. Yes. When he is not in a position to determine, then another individual comes and says, I have mine. You see, it's an institutional situation. But going to this matter, honestly, I'm loath to comment extensively about it. I understand that it's a matter that the Speaker has set up a small committee which is looking into this matter. I would rather stay within the ambit of that. However, I want to comment very briefly on two aspects of it. One, being the question of fraud. I mean, my brother, lawyer, you are also a lawyer, is aware. Fraud is a term of art. Fraud is a word that's defined in the criminal code. And it implies a knowingness before going forward to deceive. And knowingly setting up a set of circumstances that you knew not to be true at the time you were professing them to another party to gain a benefit from that party. And therefore, when you are found out, the fraudulence is in the initial representations which you knew were not true. That, to my mind, and it can be broken down when you go into the criminal code.
And the letter that the High Commissioner sent to the Speaker, the opening said people who were involved in visa fraud. That's the charge the gentleman wants withdrawn because he says that is wrong.
Well, even the example he has given, the definition of fraud he has given, ropes in.
Well, that's it?
Yes. I said that I'm loath to comment. I don't want to make value judgments. I am not only defining what I believe.
No, but you should be able to make a categorical statement by your understanding of the law. I cannot say he was
fraudulent or not, because I'm not seized of all the circumstances. I'm not seized of the processes through which the visas were approved.
You don't need to be seized with any further information than the fact which is common about how to sponsor someone when they are applying for a visa.
Something. I don't know the representations that were made in the application.
It is the basic, common representation everybody has to make when you are sponsoring somebody.
I don't know.
And I don't know whether he stated that. Undertake to bring him back or her back.
I don't know whether he stated he was otherwise. I don't know whether he stated the true relationship between he and the person being, in quotes, sponsored. I don't know any of these things. All I'm saying is that the pre-information must have been designed to deceive. Secondly, I think it's important that this matter ought to have been dealt with within diplomatic channels. It's unfortunate it's blown up because Parliament has been aware of this matter for quite some time before it came into the public domain. And it would have been useful and interesting if, under the norms of international cooperation, international activities, they could have kept it within the state channels, the High Commission and Parliament. And to the extent that it's broken out this way, I think it's unfortunate.
Yes, Dr. Kwete, quickly.
Under the Geneva Convention,
I had dealt with you on this.
But under the Geneva Convention,
it's the lawyers
of a country.
I say so.
Is a parliament of a country given diplomatic status?
Under the Vienna Convention?
Under the Vienna Convention.
I don't know.
I don't think
it's not. Okay.
I said because there was a diplomatic.
So thank you. Let's hear from Dr. Kwete.
You know, two things. I think that it could have been resolved through diplomatic channels. Usually embassies would deal with Ministry of Foreign Affairs. In this case, we're in a situation where missions are able to deal with Parliament. After all, they support Parliament in many ways and so on. But why has it taken so long to resolve the issue? You see, things coming out in public sometimes, it's like, it reminds me of what is happening in the US, in Trump, where, you know,
the Russian
tip off now, every day a newspaper comes out with something because they want a certain process to go on and be resolved, you know. So I don't know why it took so long, whether it's the first time Parliament is dealing with this and therefore it didn't have procedures. If so, why didn't Parliament then consult with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which has lawyers well versed in these things to see how best they should go? And then there's the need for some action. And therefore the High Commission, you cannot blame the High Commission. Again, it goes to what I consider to be the consistent failure of people and rules and policies to be applied to defend state interests. You know, it is a matter that we must be wary of. The second thing, diplomatic passport, I think it's just a sense of entitlement, a certain culture and deep belief that once you get close to the state, you must benefit from it privately. Okay, so you finish your service, you are not returning the passport, you keep it. Every government has faced this problem, confronted it. And you've read in the papers, return your passport, we're going to take, I mean, it's such an administrative thing that it shouldn't even merit national attention. And I will tell you something that I found to be interesting. I've never understood the real privileges that diplomatic passport gives. I've never understood it. Because you know what? I had the privilege of being part of the Commonwealth Eminent Persons Group. Immediately it was announced. I was also serving on the Ministry of Foreign Affairs Ministerial Advisory Committee. I was on that. And then it was clear that I could apply for a diplomatic passport to facilitate my movements and so on. And then the protocol also told me, in fact, when it was announced, they wanted to take me to the airport. I would use the VIP. And I said to them, please, I like going to airport very late. I just want to get there and get on the flight. So if you come in, you're going to change that culture. I don't want, I'll stick to it, okay? 2, I felt that the institution that had appointed me has responsibility to make sure that I go to places easily. So I didn't apply, but it never hindered my movement, you know? And sometimes, if it's a matter of sitting in the business class, it's not the diplomatic passport that gives you that. It is the institution that invited you. Yeah. So I've always wondered.
I think because you didn't use it, you don't seem to appreciate the privileges that it brings.
But I'll tell you what, well, it's not that. I've known people who've used it. I've gone through a lot of times through the diplomatic the VIP lounge to meet people. I've had favors in the past and so on until I started questioning the system. It's nice that somebody meets you on the tarmac. It's nice that you are given this exception. You go and wait and the suitcases are brought to you. And every now and then, you know, but I truly think that it is given to you to facilitate service to the state.
Right.
And therefore, the obsession of holding on to it is what I'm saying you don't really need.
You're right,
because some of the things you do when you leave the coast or the shores of Ghana, you can equally do with your ordinary passport.
All right.
You know, that's for me. If you want the High Commission people to meet you in Heathrow, you may not always need that. It will be unnecessary.
Thank you. Your other guests disagree with you on the benefits that come with holding
because I haven't used it.
Now,
I should have taken it.
Let me share some of the comments that have come in, and then we take a break. From Iliasu in Tamale, he says that President Akufo-Addo's pledge to curb galamsey and corruption is unwavering. We cannot continue to be in a vicious cycle over their illegal activities. This has nothing to do with politics because disaster knows no politics. Stop galamsey now. Musa in Kumasi, you keep referring to Musa Abattoir. You live around the abattoir? Okay, he says, clearly, lack of coordination, okay, speaking like Okubaku, among the ministers will hinder the progress in the fight against galamsey. Spike in Cincinnati. in the USA says that before this galamsey menace could be eradicated, the unseen hands behind need to be chopped off. The big guys in the police, military, the chiefs need to be named, shamed, and jailed. Until that is done, this fight is dead on arrival. Bonti Benjamin in Achime Boakye says if our forefathers had destroyed the fertile lands with galamsey, a lot of us wouldn't have been where we are today. Let's think about the future and not our personal interest. And speaking of our forefathers, I just remember how Yao Boabing Asamoah gave us a history of, as it were, the etymology of the word galamsey. I never paid attention to it. Gather and sell. I didn't know about that. But again, about the passport matter, fraud. Are these MPs sitting right here before me actually applying the law strictly as they know that in this case, the sponsors can be held for fraud in a court of law? I doubt. We'll be right back to deal with matters of scandal, millions.